Hi, welcome back to Counterfeit Emotions. I'm Curtis Morley, and I'm an emotionologist. And today I have a very special guest. I am so excited for everyone listening today because I have Jodi Orgill Brown on the show today. And Jodi is amazing. You can't help but love Jodi if you know Jodi. She's a speaker. She's an author. She wrote The Sun Still Shines, as well as The Depression Fighter. And if you look very closely, within the word depression is press on. And on top of all that, she's one of the most authentic people I've met. And you know how important authenticity is here on the Counterfeit Emotions podcast. Today we're going to talk about power versus control. We're going to talk about surrender versus resignation. We're going to talk about how to make it through some really, really hard times that most people will never have to go through. And my hope is that as we talk, that today you'll find hope. You'll find hope in the struggles you're going through, because we all have them. And today we're going to hear Jodi's story about how to make it through some of the toughest. Jodi, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. I'm honored to spend time with you today.
I was so excited when you said yes to come on the show. There's some guests that are like, oh, that's cool. But when you said yes, I was genuinely excited because of the goodness that you exude, the authenticity. And I don't know anybody. You don't just like Jodi Orgill Brown. You love Jodi Orgill Brown. Like, there's nobody that's like, oh, I like her. No, it's like, no, I love Jodi because of the person that you are.
And, thank you.
Yeah, the person you've become. I'm sure that the trials, the struggles that you've had to overcome are so deep, are so refining, that you're probably a very different person inside than you were years ago.
Yes, and I have to say thank you for the invitation, because some of the greatest experiences in my life have come from saying yes to unexpected invitations. And I think we often want to plan out everything that we're going to do and have control, as we are going to talk about a little bit, over things. And yet there are wonderful things that can be in store for us when we say yes to things that we hadn't necessarily planned for or put on the calendar, but the opportunities and invitations that come to us. So thank you.
Yeah. And I introduced you as one of the most authentic people. I think one of the reasons, like the more I get to know you, I think one of the reasons that I believe that's true, and tell me if I'm hitting it or not.
Okay.
is that you follow your heart. Is that you are really good at following your heart, to listening to those promptings, the still small voice, and to following it, not just listening, but following.
Anytime in my life where I have stopped doing that, where I'm trying too hard to pursue my own will, I find myself like the hamster in the wheel, where you're running and running and running, and you're putting all of the effort in, and yet you still feel like something is missing. You're still never getting anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
And I've had many times like that. And I realize it's because I'm doing things for the wrong reason. I'm doing them out of, a temporary or selfish desire, or something that I want to achieve or accomplish. And I realize that's not who I am at heart. And it's only when I step back and say, why am I really doing this to begin with? If I'm doing this to touch someone's life, then how much I'm making from it, or how many times I'm speaking, like, those things shouldn't matter. But the selfish ego part occasionally will get in the way and will start to take over. And if it's good at that, right? It's really good at wiggling its way in and saying, no, I'm the most important. I'm the most important. And any time that happens, it means I've lost touch with that part of my heart that is listening to those promptings. And so I appreciate you acknowledging that I do try to listen to my heart, because what that has meant is several course corrections over my life, because None of us are perfect, but I do hope that I will be able to continue to make those course corrections, because when you can make course corrections, it means, okay, I'm willing to listen again, and I'm trying to keep myself in that place where I'm open to what comes next.
Yeah. As you follow your heart, you said you've taken many course corrections. You've had many things in life, and life has given you some course corrections so that everybody kind of understands your story. Would you just share a little piece of your story and what got you to today?
Absolutely. I was living what I deemed to be my white picket fence life, living in a home I loved with my 4 children, with my husband, who's my best friend. And I had 2 degrees, was working a job I loved in the nonprofit field. I was raising money for organizations who helped people in my community and in my state. And
So doing a lot of
I
good.
was doing a lot of good. And I honestly was living the life I always dreamed about.
What were your degrees in?
I have an undergraduate in public relations and then a master's degree in organizational leadership and communication.
Okay.
So I was helping organizations
Yeah.
inside out and being able to help them learn how to structure and communicate and how to do leadership from all sides. And I was helping lead some of these organizations to raise funds to make a difference in the community. And I loved it. I felt like I was in my sweet spot where I was truly able to make a difference. And now looking back, I realize I was then and had always been on what call the giving side of life. I was
Mm.
able to be the one who was contributing, who was helping, who was making things happen, who was helping things to happen for other people. And then life dealt me a little bit of a blow, as it tends to do. And I was diagnosed with a tumor between the end of my ear canal and wrapping around my brainstem.
Mm.
And it was initially deemed to be inoperable. And through a series of what can only be explained as miracles, we were connected to the right person who changed my inoperable diagnosis into an operable diagnosis, which in and of itself was literally life-saving and life-changing. And so I went into the hospital for what was supposed to be 1 surgery and 5 days in recovery. And that 1 surgery turned into 3 craniotomies, 35 days in neurocritical care, a spinal fluid leak, facial paralysis, brain infection, losing my hearing in my right ear, and just about every complication known to man except for death. And so it literally took me to the very brink of this life and changed everything I knew about every relationship that I had, everything I knew about myself. I had to question and come to a point of figuring out, well, first of all, it was surviving. It was just getting through. And once I knew I was going to live, and that was not a given in the beginning, but once I finally knew that I was going to live, it was a matter of how do I go on now when everything that I know about myself is completely changed? So it was quite an adventure for a period of time. And I would love to say that that adventure happened and then it just finished. But the reality is, I am still going through the adventure. I am now 17 years out from those initial brain surgeries, and I'm 26 surgeries in.
Wow.
So my most recent one was just 7 or 8 months ago, and that was surgery number 26.
Wow. And you went from the white picket life where you were clearly doing good in the world. It's not like you were, you had a Saul to Paul moment. It's not like you were out there, doing horrible things in the world and God said no.
And totally changed my direction because of that. No, it wasn't that way at all. In fact, that was maybe internally, that was part of wondering, like, I tried never to say, why is this happening to me? Because I'm no different or no better than any other person. And I know that things like this happen. So I tried not to do the why me. I didn't want to go there. But there were still the questions as to, okay, there's got to be a reason for this. Is there something I'm supposed to do differently? Is this a turn in my life? At the time, I didn't want to accept that it was going to be the end of my life, but it came very, very, very close.
Hmm.
And that didn't make sense to me in the beginning as to why, as a young mother with 4 little kids, my kids were ages 2 to 10.
Wow.
And
Wow.
so when some of the heaviness of that settled in, and I realized what it could mean if I were no longer here to be not just a wife, but a mother, um, there were parts of it that just didn't make sense. And having so many question marks still in front of me, I was just trying to understand what I was supposed to do with my life, because I really thought that once I had gotten to the point where, okay, I'm going to make it, I'm going to live, I'm going to go home, I thought that that was the conquering point. And what I have since realized is, in a challenge like mine, and for challenges that many of us face, there's no such thing as overcoming, because some
Ooh, go
challenges
deeper on
go
that.
on and on and on. But what I can do, I'm not ever going to overcome what has happened to me in this life, because it continues to challenge me every single day. I don't know when I wake up whether I'm going to be a functional person or whether I'm going to have brain fog and a massive migraine and not be able to get out of bed, or whether my facial paralysis is going to cause problems and I'm going to have to go back in for more surgery. Uh, there are so many unknowns that in reality, my brain tumor challenges will never be overcome. But what I have learned is that I can still be the conqueror by choosing every day to rise above, to become
Hmm.
better than I was before, and to not let it take over my life, to not let it define me, but instead to let it refine me.
Wow. So instead of defining, you say it's time to refine. And that goes so well to the dyad in Counterfeit Emotions of victim and victor.
Absolutely. And anytime that you go into the place where you are feeling like a victim, it changes everything. It takes away your power, because if you're the victim, then you can't do anything. It's up. What happens to you is within someone else's power and control. And it's only when you own that you still have power to choose the way that you go forward. That's when you can accept. That's when you can surrender the things you need to surrender. And I could say, okay, this isn't something I can overcome. I'm not ever going to be over this in my life, but I can still choose to conquer every day.
Yeah.
Even if conquering means I'm taking care of myself and I'm staying in bed so that I can get better, then I've conquered that day, because I'm doing the thing that was honestly best for me and for my loved ones in that situation. And it took me a long time to come to that point, because
How long? How long did it take?
years. My normal personality is a type A, conquer the world, control everything, plan it, put it on the calendar, schedule it in between semesters. That was, and up until my illness, I had been able to do that
Yeah.
for the most part.
Yeah.
I was a force to be reckoned with. I would like to think that it was always in positive ways, but I know there are times when that desire to have control instead of power had negative effects on people. And I didn't always understand that in the time, but now I have realized that, conquering sometimes means just taking care of yourself.
Yeah.
And it literally took me years, because the type A part of my personality was saying, but if you don't get up and accomplish and do this and this and this, then what are you here for? What's your
Oh,
purpose?
I so resonate with that.
And
Absolutely.
when I couldn't take care of my kids, and when I was watching someone else fold my laundry while I was laying in bed or laying on the couch, there's nothing so low as when you're watching someone fold your underwear in front of you and you're thinking, I do not want you to be here doing this.
Hmm.
No one should be doing this for you. Like, this is something I need to be doing for myself. And not being able to take care of my kids. And everyone's saying, oh, no, you just take care of yourself. You take care of yourself. But that was not the way I was programmed. And so it was very, very hard to accept that taking care of myself was sometimes the most important thing that needed to be done. And it literally took me years to get to that point. And in that series of years, I experienced enormous amount of shame and guilt as
Mm.
I was not doing what I thought I should be doing. When someone else was taking care of my family, when my kids were getting themselves up and ready, and they were fixing their own breakfast, and they were fixing their own lunches, and they were going to school
Doing their own hair and
and doing their own hair, and they were coming to wake up mom as they walked out the door to say goodbye. And then I was just in bed, and able I was not able to do those things. And yet every time they walked out the door, like, I would have tears in my eyes as I was going back to sleep because I was not doing what I should have been doing.
I love that you put that in quotes.
Mm.
Yeah. In all of my writings, my books, my blogs, you won't find the word should unless I'm talking about should, because it's so shame-filled. It's so guilt, or not guilt, shame-ridden.
We need
Yeah,
to delete it from our vocabularies.
we really do. And I love the verbiage and the terminology you've been using. When you started sharing your story, you said, I wanted to ask, why is this happening to me? Instead of, why is this happening for me? Which you said later. You said both of those terms. And if you want to be a victim, it's easy. It's so easy to be a victim. All you have to do is say, why is this happening to me?
Yes.
And in order to transcend from victim to victor, you just change the one word. And just like you said, you change it from 2 to 4. Why is this happening for me?
And when you do that, then you have a totally different perspective and you can stand back and see the bigger picture. And that's what I've been able to see over the years is the things that in the moment I thought may have thought were happening to me. Why can't I take care of my kids? Why am I stuck in bed and other people are out able to do their lives? Now I look at the positive effects that have come from that. And I look at my kids
Mm.
who are now older. They are 19 to 27, and they are some of the most independent, functional people that I know. They could walk into any home, any office, any business, see what needs to be done, jump in and do it. And they are self-starters. They are compassionate. They see people who are in need and they reach toward them instead of pushing back and standing away, because that was what they learned. They learned to take care of themselves and reach out and take care of others, because that's what they did their whole lives, is they helped mom get through things. They would come home and one of the first things they would do is come and check on me. How are you doing? What do you need?
Mm.
You stay there. I'll go put away the groceries. You stay there. I'll go get you, a glass of water and your medication or whatever was needed in the moment. They were the ones who stepped up and did that. And they did that from this big on. And depending on which child at which stage of life, my boys were my right-hand men. They were there with me. They literally, my arm, my strong arm when I needed help walking to and from the car to the grocery store, or my daughter, pushing the cart next to me, helping me in the grocery store. They were there in and out of every moment when we were learning those hard lessons. And sometimes I felt like those things were happening to me. And it was only with time and the right perspective that I could see this has been one of the greatest blessings for my family and for me, is to see what life is really about. And it's not about just checking off the task list. It's about the influence that you can have. It's about the impact that you can have through every little interaction you have with someone else, including your own family members.
Yeah. And the third step in the transcendence ladder is from victim to victor to vessel. And I see that in you so much. I see you being a vessel. And maybe it wasn't a Saul to Paul moment. Maybe it was a Job moment where instead of going from doing harm to others to now bringing people to Christ, the entire time you're having everything taken. You're having everything that you had put in your plan, your master plan of life, taken from you.
I feel very blessed that early on in my journey, after I got out of the hospital, I was going to therapists to learn how to use my body the way that it was. And I was with one of my therapists who was trying to teach me some coping mechanisms and some neuroscience, some brain tricks that I could do so that I could make my body do the things that it needed to be able to do when it wasn't doing it on its own anymore. But one of the most important pieces of advice that she gave me had nothing to do with training my body, but she gave me some advice that really freed me from getting caught in those negative thoughts. And she said, you have to let go of what was so that you can fully embrace what is and what will be. And
Wow.
you have to mourn for the life that you left behind as though that person has died, but a new one is born. And we celebrate birth. We don't mourn birth, we celebrate birth.
Mhm.
And yet, many people get stuck in the mourning phase when they have a change of life, when the reality is they need to move on to the birth phase and look at it as an opportunity for something new. But it can be a very hard place to be, especially because we don't think of doing that when you're as an adult, when you're grown and you think that you've gone from birth to age 30 or 40 or wherever you are in life, you don't think of a rebirth and starting over again. And yet we know from the scriptures that tell us in order for us to become more like Christ and to become better and truly be able to have the impact that we can have, we need to have that rebirth. We need to make sure that our hearts are in the right place. And sometimes that means we have to start over. So it continues to be a difficult but very worthwhile journey.
Mhm. And I feel that from you. I feel that so strongly. Like, yeah, it's hard. Life is hard. And at the same time, experiencing that rebirth, experiencing the ability to say what is instead of what should be or what I thought my perfect life was going to be. That's so important. That's so important because I look at I l- well, they actually studied prisoners of war, and they took a look at who survived
Mm-hmm.
the most horrible situations, and what they found was it wasn't the optimists. You
No.
would have thought, oh wait, it'd be the happy people, it'd be the optimists. It wasn't the pessimists. It was the realists. It was the people that accepted what is. The people that said, I accept this in all of the pain, in all of the joy, both sides. I accept what is right now. And is it my ideal to be locked in a cage in Vietnam? No, it's not. But that's what is. And the ones that survived, the ones that made it, were the ones that said, I accept what is.
And one of the principles, so I do a lot of teaching on resilience and anti-fragility. And anti-fragility is essentially it's becoming better and stronger from the things that challenge you, not just bouncing back to be as good as you were before, but actually growing and strengthening because of the things that push you, test you, the mistakes that you make, the challenges that you have. And one of the principles of that I love is that you have to accept what is instead of what was. And there are too many people that just focus their lives on what used to be. How many people hang on to those Letterman jackets or those size 6 clothes that are still in the closet and they can't let go of them because that was the glory days. That's when I was at my best. That's what I'm going to get back to. And they're constantly trying to go back to a place in time rather than saying, but here's where I am. And when you accept where you are, that also means you accept where you can go and you realize you have the power to make that choice rather than having it all be dependent on, no, I have to get back there first and then I can move forward and then I can be happy and then I can get the job and then I can, that's not a healthy place to be. But when you accept what is, where you are, then you come into the power to say, okay, I can control what I do at this point in time. Or maybe not even control, but I can have power to choose. And when
Yes.
you walk into
Yes.
that, you step into saying, I get to choose every day. It's within my power to
Yeah.
make my decisions. I used to hear the part in the scriptures in Joshua 24:15, where it says, choose ye this day, but as for me and my house, we will choose the Lord. I used to think for some things choosing was an individual event. Like, I'm going to choose this day, and that's forever my choice. I'm choosing to be on the Lord's side. I'm choosing to be the wife of Richard Tolan Brown. Like, that was my one day decision. No, that is a daily decision. That is choose ye this day today,
Every
and
day.
choose ye this day tomorrow, and the next day, and the next day. And every day we get up and we have the chance to choose. And sadly, I think today it's so easy to get out of things that you can make a commitment and say, I'm choosing this today. And then tomorrow you can say, yeah, maybe I don't want to choose that anymore.
But
And people back out of things that were meant to be lifelong commitments.
yeah.
And they
Mm.
instead, they take away some of their own power, and they step away from the choices that they've made. So life is interesting, and it is obviously I think we need to do a better job at helping our young people especially understand the power that they have to create their future, to create the
Yes.
life that they want, to lean into their choices, and to create the white picket fence lives that they want to have instead of feeling like things are happening to them.
Yeah. And the true difference between power and control is that power is what lives inside. Control is what we try to do the
Or
outside.
we try to manifest, having your hands on things and no, you do it this way.
Yeah. And I'm sure when you were at your lowest, when everything was being stripped away, when the dream of the white picket fence was gone and your health was gone, and even, the ability to function like you used to be able to function was all gone. That was, my guess, is where you found true power.
I wouldn't have thought so in the moment, but now I understand that that's absolutely right, because I had been living in that part where I was trying so hard to have control over what was happening to me. And no matter what I did, it was not working. No matter what I did or could have done, I could not have saved myself.
Hmm.
And yet I tried and I tried and I tried. And I did everything that everyone told me to do. And it got to a point, I can even tell you the day, it was June 7th, where my systems were starting to shut down. I had something extra going on besides all of the things that I already mentioned. There was something else going on. The doctors didn't know what it was. I didn't know what it was. But whatever it was that was undefined at that moment, it was clearly draining the life out of me. And all they knew was that I was getting worse by degrees every single day. And they were testing for all sorts of things. And they were not able to find what it was that was the cause. They just knew that my health was dropping off so quickly. And that particular day was, I now know, my lowest point of my life, where I could feel what was happening inside of me, to the point where I was less aware of what was going on around me in the room, and I was aware of my internal battle. And it felt like I could hear like the shushing and the flowing of blood in my organs. I was so connected to what was happening on the inside, and I could feel everything slowing and starting to shut down. And I was watching my mother and my husband running around the room, talking to different specialists, making phone calls, calling my dad who was in Hawaii on business. And, I remember my mom having the conversation with my dad, like, Juan, we're losing her. Like, I don't know if she's going to make it.
And you could hear this.
And looking at my husband and thinking, he doesn't know. He doesn't realize that I'm about to leave. If he knew, like, he wouldn't leave my side. He wouldn't let go of my hand. He'd be sitting here holding on to me, but he wasn't ready to accept. And yet I knew within my heart, like, this is my last day. These are my last hours. And there was part of me that wanted somehow to communicate with them, to tell them what was going on, to let them know that, this is it. And my mom uh, called my family, and I remember she put my sister on the phone. And I remember my sister Tammy saying, "Joe, you just got to fight. You got to hold on. You got to fight. Just promise me that you're going to fight." And I could no longer make those promises. I had been fighting and fighting and fighting and trying to manifest control over something that I clearly had no control of. And all I could say to her was, "I love you. Just know that I love you." And as subsequent family members got on the phone, that was all I could say was, "I just need you to know that I love you. I'm not choosing to give up, but I did get to the point where I chose to surrender." And when it came to that point, I just felt it was time. I knew it was time. And I still thought, "Oh, I wish my husband understood. I wish that he knew that these were our last moments." And I still knew that he didn't. He couldn't feel what was going on inside of me. And so as he would talk to me, I was just telling him over and over again, "I love you. I love you. Just know that I love you." I just wanted him to know I wasn't choosing to leave him. I wasn't giving up on him. I wasn't giving up on our family, but I was surrendering to what was. And in those moments when I took what I believed were going to be my last breaths, there was great freedom and peace in not trying to have control anymore, and in just saying, "Okay, I'm letting go, and it's okay. I am surrendering. Not my will be done, but thy will be done. And if this is what is to be done, I accept that." And in the moment where, in my mind, never out loud, this was all happening inside my head, but in the moment where I accepted and leaned into that surrender, I just had this feeling of peace. And all I can say is it felt like when you're outside and it's really cold, and then you come inside and you close the door, and there's kind of that whoosh of, "Oh, I've left the cold behind and now I'm in the warmth." And it kind of this overwhelming, all encompassing feeling. And then it felt as though arms were being wrapped around me in a big hug. And I was so at peace, even though I thought it was my last moment on earth. I was in such a place of contentment. There were no more worries. There was nothing to fear. It was just beauty, peace, even though I knew that that meant leaving my family. And although the logical side of my mind couldn't wrap around how I could be at peace with that somehow within me, I just knew that if that's what was supposed to happen, that was okay and I could accept it. And I don't know how long that moment actually lasted. It felt like it lasted for a long time, and then it also felt like it was over in a second. But once I had that point of truly surrendering my expectations, my wants, my desires, my control, and surrendering everything and just saying, "I'm leaning into what is, and I'm leaning into thy will, not my will," and feeling that total peace of letting go of all of it. In the next instant, I had a different feeling. And that was, I had a very clear and distinct voice in my head that said, "Fight, Jodi. You have to keep fighting." And then I had an image of my 2-year-old son that popped into my mind. And the realization hit me that if I died that night, my son was not going to remember his mom. And I was not at peace with that. I was not okay with my baby not knowing his mom. And that thought, and the thought of not wanting my family to think that I gave up on them, just, it came at me so strongly that and there was part of me that knew that choosing to stay meant more pain, more uncertainty, more hard days. And yet I knew that I would choose that over and over and over again if it meant I could stay and be there with them. And I chose. And the pain was there, and my body was still failing me. And yet, within moments, my husband's grandfather was flying into town, and he went straight from the airport and came to the hospital to see me. He had lost his wife from cancer at the exact same age that I was.
Oh, wow.
When I was in my battle, 33 years old.
Oh, wow.
And he had to tell his 2 young children that their mom had died and was not coming home from the hospital. So I think my husband felt a really special connection to his grandfather at that time in his life. So his grandfather showed up in the hospital, and together they offered to give me a blessing, a very special prayer directed right to me at the time when I was in the most need. And I remember his grandfather actually saying the words to me. This is actually the only part I really remember, but this will be the lowest point of your life on this earth. But from this moment on, you will start to get better and you will start to improve. And I have to say, in the moment, I didn't believe it because I still thought, nope, I'm dying. He just doesn't know I'm dying yet. He doesn't know the experience I've just had.
The trajectory
He
you're
doesn't
on.
know. He doesn't know that it turned out that I was the one who didn't know, that in that opportunity that I had to make a choice, that I really did get to choose my trajectory, and I chose to stay. And even though my body still was shutting down on its own, I had made up my mind and I had chosen to stay. And moments after the blessing ended, a doctor, a resident, it was a teaching hospital, and there were constantly residents coming in and out, and I felt a little bit like a guinea pig. A lot of times they were trying out their theories and trying out their tests and their pokes and their prods on me. That a resident who had never cared for me before walked into the room, and he and my husband were discussing my condition. And my husband told him how I was doing, and the resident got an idea. And my husband said, here's the thing she's going through. Have you thought about this? Have you thought about this? And the resident decided, well, maybe we need to do some more testing. And they rushed me out of the room and took me down and did some testing. And then these tests revealed what was going on, which was that I had a condition called pneumocephalus, which is air or gas on the brain. And what they found out was when they did my brain surgeries, somehow they sewed me back up, but there was still a hole. And that hole in my brain was allowing air to get into my brain cavity. And the air was not allowing me to function properly. And it is a very fatal condition. And so the reason I felt like my body was shutting down was because it was. And my brain was not functioning, and everything was starting to give way. But as soon as they identified what the problem was, they also knew what to do. And the solution is very simple, and it's that you have to, well, two things. You have to seal the hole. You have to find and seal the hole. And number two, you have to have direct oxygen that goes to you. So they pushed me immediately back into neurocritical care. I was in the ICU.
Like in a hyperbaric chamber?
No, they didn't. They didn't have to do that. Literally, it was just a face mask where they were pumping oxygen into me, and had to give me a certain amount of time for the oxygen to get in me. And then they had to find the hole, and they had to seal it. So the next day, they called in some additional specialists, and they went in and they did an experimental procedure that had only been done 4 times before.
So you were number 5.
I was number 5. And they went in with almost a needle and thread approach to go find this hole and then they sealed the hole kind of by hand, and that was the start of my actual recovery. It was from that point on that I started to heal, and my body was no longer breaking down and shutting down, but it was helping me to get better. Now, I was still in the hospital for a couple more weeks afterwards, and I was still a very sick human for a long time. I had always believed that by the time I got out of the hospital, I would be well and I would be whole. And when I got out of the hospital, I weighed 89 pounds.
Oh, wow.
I couldn't have walked to my mailbox. I couldn't eat food. I couldn't process anything in my systems. I'd been on IVs and living artificially sustained for so long that none of my systems were working. And I was still a very, very sick person. But my body was, by small degrees, finally starting to get better, and I was starting to heal. So that's a lot that we went through. But for me, the changing point was that moment of surrender.
That's when everything changed.
That's when everything changed.
Where instead of Jodi's plan, you said, okay, God, I'm going to try your plan.
And when I talked earlier about course corrections in my life now, every time I have a course correction, it's because I've tried to put Jodi's plan in place. And I always try to consult the Lord to figure out what the plan is for me. And sometimes I get clear direction and sometimes I don't. And so sometimes I'm stumbling forward thinking, well, maybe this is what I should do, or maybe I should try this. But it always becomes apparent when this is not the plan. This is Jodi's plan. This is not God's plan. And that's when I can feel in my heart like, okay, something needs to change. And I have I've gotten to practice over and over and over again. When I try really hard to make something work, and I just am running in that hamster wheel, I've tried really hard to make some things work. And I've also gotten a lot better at accepting and letting go and saying, okay, I don't need to be tied to this. This is not who I am. This is not what really matters. It's not accomplishing any goal or measure of man. Things that people would say, oh no, but you would be so good at this. You deserve to be on this stage. You deserve to make this much or to have this title or this honor. And I have gotten much, much better at stepping away and just letting go and saying that I don't need that if that's not what the Lord wants for me.
Yeah.
That's an ego-driven thing. That's
the control.
That's the control. The power comes in finding the peace and the freedom to do what you were really meant to do. Whether that means, again, that you're taking care of yourself, you're taking care of others, or you truly are changing lives through messages that you have to deliver. And I fully lean into that too. And I do that. And I get on stages and I teach principles and I go into organizations and I write books. And that is important. And it's important for us to understand what our purpose is and what our mission is at each different stage in our lives. And I think part of my letting go and finding peace is realizing the different stages and seasons of our lives. And that, maybe this is what I was supposed to do in that season, but now I'm moving into a new season. And then like feeling within my heart and letting the Lord speak to me and tell me, what is it I'm supposed to do now in this season of my life?
I love that. I love that you changed your perspective to letting go and letting God. Instead of this is Jodi's plan in my life. I was auditioning for the lead role in my movie for my whole life. And the sad thing was I never got the part. I kept auditioning over and over and over again. And that's when I realized I didn't need to be the lead in my movie. I needed to be a supporting actor in the greatest story ever told.
Oh, I love that. And isn't that interesting that you felt like you were competing and trying out for and auditioning for the role in your own life instead of leaning into what your role really was and finding where your strengths really were? And for me, it's looked a little bit different. But as I got started to get better, and as people started to hear my story, um, immediately they started asking me to share my story. I didn't set out to be a speaker, but people asked me to share my story. And I quickly realized, okay, this is not about me. It's not about my story. It's not about a brain tumor. It's about them. And in every time I get on a stage, I recognize that people are living my experience through their own lens.
Yeah.
And they're thinking, okay, what would I have done if this were me, or if this were my spouse, if this were, my husband, my wife, and my family? How would I have handled it? Or, they're putting themselves in their own perspectives. And so to help them have principles that could actually help, that's what I love, is to be able to teach principles that are true, that really can help people get through the difficult things in their lives. But as I started getting on more stages and publishing books and getting more attention for all of those things, without realizing it, that ego was starting to creep back in.
Coming right back. Yeah.
And people were saying, oh, you're so good at this. Like, you should, try for this accolade, this title. You should be president of our organization. Will you run for the president role? And I remember a very distinct conversation where someone called me and they asked me if I would run for president of the National Speakers Association organization that I'm a part of, that you're very familiar with. And I said, yes. I said, okay, I will run. And there was part of me that was excited and thought, wow, I could be president. Think of the things that I could do. And I went home that night and I could not sleep at all.
Oh, wow.
I had literally nightmares, and started feeling like I hadn't even run. I hadn't even gotten the part, and yet I was already failing in my mind and having all of these nightmare scenarios going through my mind, and I did not have any kind of peace over the next days.
Mm.
And finally, I had to make a phone call, and I said, I know I said that I would run, but I have to withdraw my name. And I had people who really came and questioned me and said, but you would be so good and you could do so much good in this position.
Mm.
And I really feel like you're supposed to do this. And they said things like that. And there was part of me again that wanted to believe them, but I knew what my own experience was. And it was that my heart was not at peace. And that was one of those course corrections. And so I said, I appreciate all of that, but I already know that this is not what I'm supposed to do. Even though the get her done, conquer the world type A personality part of Jodi would have loved to have taken on that role, I knew it was not actually good for me. And there have been many times since then where what I did was starting to become more important than the impact and the messages, and it was taking over my life, and I was having less and less to offer my family because I was giving more and more of myself to everyone else to accomplish these accolades and these levels that I thought I was somehow climbing this ladder. And every time I find myself in a situation like that, that's when those course corrections come. And I find myself saying, okay, I'm going to step away from what the world's expectations of me are, and I need to lean more into the surrender of what God's expectations for me are.
So I can relate so well with you. In my life, I had my Job moment, and where it felt like everything was being taken. And I remember, as you spoke about, having Christ's arms wrapped around you. I had that moment too. And I've thought a lot about this. I've thought, like, do we all need a Job moment? Or is there another way? Do we all need to come close to death, or have everything stripped away from us to be able to surrender? Or can we surrender before that happens? And if so, how? How do we surrender in that moment where we don't, where God's like, hey, over here, I need you on this side. You keep going to the left and we need you on the right. And is there a place where we can find that type of surrender without having to have everything stripped away?
I love that question. I'm curious as to what what answer you've come to in your mind. Have you come to a place that you feel like you know how to answer that question?
Um, there's a scripture that says there's those that choose to be humble and those that are compelled to be humble. I really wish I was on the choose side. I really wish that was me, but it wasn't. It wasn't. I was compelled. And after being compelled, yeah, I chose, but I was compelled. And I keep going back to that scripture. Like, could it just be as simple as making a choice? And I know it seems so scary at the moment, like, well, I've got my plans and I've got my picket fence and I know where I'm going and life has to look like this and all of these dependencies and this control, and letting go of all that, truly just letting go and saying, not my will, but thy will be done.
And sometimes the hardest part of that is not knowing. Because when you make plans and you are trying to be in control of things, you've got things on your calendar, you know what your plans are, you've mapped it out, and you make things happen based on your plans.
Yeah.
And part of the difficult thing of letting go and surrendering is you don't always know what comes next. And sometimes that means you're in a space of waiting, watching, unsurety, which is not a place I like to live in. I would rather have the GPS plan that tells me where I'm going to go
You've
and
got
which
the
turn.
blue line that tells you exactly. Yep.
And even tells me, oh no, you've made a wrong turn. Get back on. I would like that for my life. And I think some of my hardest times are those times where I've realized I'm in a season of I need to course correct, I need to let go, but I don't know what comes next. And that's not a comfortable place to live in for a very long period of time. And yet I have found for me, it's critical to embrace it in order to really know what opportunity God has in store for me. And if I don't clear space for it, then I'm going to miss it. If I don't accept an invitation, I could miss it. And so there are times where people come to me with invitations, and I literally have to say, okay, pause.
You're like, wait.
Let me do some research. Let me go in the other room and get on my knees and say some prayers. And I have to analyze from my perspective and then ask. Analyze, and then I ask and say, is this an opportunity that I should accept and say yes to? And if it's small things, it's much easier. But sometimes those opportunities come or those invitations come, and it's a whole change of life. It's a change of job. It's a change of, your whole circumstances. And so I am one who prefers to be in the know so that I can plan, so that I can prepare. But I have found that if I'm not in a place of being in the openness, in the willingness to see what opportunities are coming, then I'm going to miss what the Lord really has in store for me. So I feel like I have to constantly let go and let go and let go in order to let God continue to work in my life. And I have to let go of the ego aspect, and I have to let go of people's expectations for me. My father, whom you know, Jodi Orgill, he gave me some really wise advice. And at a time where I was struggling because I was trying to take care of myself, and yet I was trying to work for an organization, and I was trying to do fewer hours and lean more into recovery. And yet, as I did fewer hours, people would say things like, well, I know you're working less, so maybe you can do this now instead. And here I was trying to pull away for a reason, to take care of myself and to let God prevail in my life. And I just said, how do I handle this? Like, I keep getting asked to do more. And my dad said, Joe, people are always going to want more of you. You have to be the one to decide how much you give. And that really hit me in that moment. The world will always have more expectations. There's always more rungs in the ladder that you can climb. There's always more accolades. There's always more letters you can add to the titles at the end of your name. And if you continue to give in to those calls when they come. If you say, oh, I could add 3 more letters, I could get another certification, I could get, not to say it's not worth it to get education and to, aim for doing things that can help yourself and others. But if the goal is to add the letters to the end of your
Look at
name,
me. Yeah.
or
This is
to
my movie.
climb the ladder, or to be that star, then you could be missing out on the real impact that you can make in the world.
Yeah. And I think that's one of the keys of surrender. Is exactly what you said is that, okay, I'm going to strive and I'm going to go down this path. And I think that this is where you want me, God. I believe this is where you want me. And then all of a sudden he says, hey, we're going here. And a big part of surrender is saying, is removing that fixed mindset of this is where I have to go. Instead saying, it doesn't matter where I go as long as I go with God.
And, we don't use a GPS unless we have a destination where we're trying to go, because then you program it in.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, the destination what I've realized is the destination cannot be a title, a job. It can't be anything like that. My destination is where the Lord wants and needs me to be, which means I have to be flexible. I'm navigating life with a compass rather than with a GPS or a specific map. I will take the path that is best for me at that time. And I don't always know what that path is going to be. And that path for me has also required me to talk about another place of surrender. Every time I have surgery, so I've continued to have problems with the biggest challenge ongoing since my brain tumor issues has been facial paralysis. When you think about someone in a wheelchair, it's pretty obvious when they can't use their legs, or if it's even higher up and they can't use their arms, everything just starts to atrophy, and you can see it in their bodies. You can see it in the way that they can't hold themselves. Their skin and their internal, you can see it all kind of starts to just fall and collect in certain places. And the same is true in the face. And so over time, I have no muscle tone. I didn't have any working muscles or nerves in my face, and everything was just literally sliding and falling off of my face. And I could no longer hold food and fluids in my mouth. I couldn't chew or swallow. I was choking when I tried to swallow. Terrifying for me, more terrifying for my children, who would be sitting there watching and not knowing if they needed to jump into action to help mom. And so I've had this series of surgeries to help. It's called reanimate, but to reanimate the muscles in my face. And so I have one working muscle on my face right now, and that's this cheek muscle right here. You can see that?
Hey, hey.
This is actually my thigh muscle. So
wow.
We did a transplant. They took a nerve from my right leg and transplanted it and sewed it into my face. And then they took a part of my thigh muscle from my other leg and they put it into my face so that I could regain that control of my mouth and my lips. And so I could, hold food and fluids in, and so that I could have better control. But with that, I've had to have surgery after surgery after surgery. They have literally peeled my face off 10 times.
Wow.
And every time I go into surgery, I have to have another level of surrender and say, okay, this is what I look like today. I don't know what I'm going to look like tomorrow. And I have to totally let go of any hold that I have on associating my worth and my value with how I look. And especially for women in our culture, that's a very difficult thing to do. And there was a period of time, about a year's period of time, where in order to do these procedures, they had to go in and open this side of my face to connect the nerve over to this side of my face. So they'd open up both sides of my face, which then left my nerves on both sides. These were already not working. And then they came in and stunned all of these ones. So for a year's period of time, I didn't have control of this side of my face either.
Oh, wow.
And
so to get better, they made it worse.
So in order to get better, it was worse. And I had I had almost nothing. I could barely move the side of my face. I could barely chew and function with my mouth. And it was very, very clear at that point in time in looking at me that, whoa, there is something wrong with that woman. And again, for the kind of personality that I have and the way that I have always felt about myself, and I'm a get her done, conquer the world. I can do anything. If anyone's going to survive, it's going to be me. Like that's my internal workings. And boy, oh boy, at times it was really challenging for me to step back and say, do I really believe that I am more than this and this?
Mm.
Or am I truly attached to what people see? And I've had to come to the point where I just let go and surrender that because I don't have power over that in those circumstances. What I have power over is how I feel about myself, how I choose to move forward. And the greatest solution to that problem, if you want to call it a problem, of um, caring about how people see me is stepping into my confidence. Because when I look someone in the eyes and I step up to them and I start the conversation and I shake their hand and we start talking and I get to know them, their questions may have started with my face, but they quickly forget about that when they start to see the person within. And that was something I had the opportunity to lean into
Yeah.
so that I didn't become dependent on that.
And it's so funny you say that because you're beautiful. Like, truly, I started the podcast by, I don't think I've ever heard anyone say, "I like Jodi." I don't think I've ever heard those words. It's, "I love Jodi," because it doesn't come from here, it comes from here. It doesn't come from your face, it comes from your heart and your soul, and that is so beautiful. And every time I see you, like, I just light up. I'm like, "It's Jodi."
Oh, I
and
love that. Thank you.
and that is this aura of beauty. And I love that you don't bring the shame with you, because there are some people that do have paralysis or do have
Yes.
deformations or all sorts of things, and they bring the shame with them, instead of saying, this is the reality, this is true. And true surrender doesn't say, "I'm attached to how I look, I'm attached to my accomplishments, I'm attached to how great I've done this or that." It lets go of all of that, and it just says, "What's really mine? What is sovereignly mine?" And there's only four things: my relationship with God, my relationship with Christ, my ability to choose my attitude and actions, and my soul. That's it. There's nothing else. And we both know, because so much was taken, that when it's all taken and there's only those four things left, that's enough. That's enough.
That is enough. And when you know that, somehow everything else becomes okay. And you can have that freedom to move forward and not let the things that do stop some people, they don't stop you. I have a lot of friends in the facial paralysis and brain tumor community who literally are hermits. They do not leave their homes because they do not want to be seen. And I have become somewhat of a spokesperson for the community, partly because I was not afraid to be seen, to get on a stage, to get on a camera and show what the reality was like. And one of my latest surgeries, we were talking about this before we started recording. My last surgery in the summer was supposed to be one that was going to correct the problems I had with
Yeah.
my eye not being able to close with the paralysis. And they were going to go on and implant a device that would help me to be able to blink my eye. But there was too much damage after years of paralysis. There was too much damage. And they said, we can't do this surgery. We have to do a different surgery. And the surgery is going to be, we have to sew part of your eye closed. And, the vision you had for this is not going to be what the outcome is. And ooh, that was a different place of surrender than I've ever been. Uh,
Hmm.
and yet has turned into, again, a beautiful, beautiful blessing, because the very thing that I thought when the doctor was telling me, I'm like, oh, this is not what I want, this is the worst case scenario,
Yeah.
has actually been so amazing. I did not realize how much time and effort I was spending caring about and worrying about the damage to my eye, which was constant. I was constantly, because I couldn't blink, um, the wind blows and I would get something in my eye and it would get stuck under my eyelid and it would, rub against my eye. I was constantly having damage. I was constantly having to protect my eye. People that know me, it's almost a joke. Like, I'm always wearing sunglasses. I'm always keeping covered up. I'm constantly putting drops and things in my eye. And they closed my eye, sewed it, and I just thought, oh my gosh, this is just awful. This is going to be horrible. And it has given me the most respite and the most
Hmm.
peace, and I don't worry about it anymore. And people are saying, oh, are you excited for like when the time comes that hopefully there'll be enough recovery that you can go in and have the next procedure done? No, I'm not thinking about that. I'm just thinking, wow, it's so nice to not have to worry about it. And that was not, again, part of my plan, would not have been what I wanted for myself, but it has been the best blessing of respite that I could have ever had.
Yeah. Yeah. And that was surgery 25, right?
That one was surgery 25. Yes. Yep.
And you posted about this.
I did.
You did a post surgery, and if you guys aren't following Jodi, go follow Jodi Orgill Brown on Instagram, LinkedIn, everywhere, because you'll be able to see this post, which it's like what 722,000 people have liked it. You've got Ellen DeGeneres talking about it. You've got
The Rock, Dwayne
The Rock,
Johnson.
Dwayne Johnson, Belinda Carlisle.
Belinda Carlisle, one of my heroes.
Right. Her music is great.
Her music is great. My sister and I used to come up with routines to her music. So her songs would come on and like we would go out in our front yard and we would do these routines to her songs. And now she messages me and we're friends on Instagram and it's just amazing.
and all of the virality is great, but you talk about your brain tumor, and you talk about in the post, you talk about that you had to make the decision to show up.
Yes.
You had to make the decision because it wasn't what you wanted. It wasn't, you had this expectation that it was going to be something, and it wasn't. And what was going through your heart? Why do you think it resonated so much with so many people?
That's a great question. And the thing that I have come up with in thinking about it now for myself is, number one, we all, as humans, have experiences that are going to be difficult, and we all have to make those choices of how we're going to move forward. And in the video and in my life, I am constantly choosing, am I going to let this make me become better or bitter? And I have seen people who have become bitter from the experiences they have had.
And
hide, get mad. Those doctors that ruined my life. In fact, I remember getting out of the hospital and going. One of my sons walked with me to a neighbor to go visit a friend who had a cancer journey of her own. And I thought, okay, this is going to be good. I now have something I can really relate. We're going to be able to converse in a way that we can help each other.
Yeah.
And that was not the nature of the conversation at all.
Hmm.
It was very negative, and she was very derogatory toward my doctors. Well, you should sue those dumbass doctors who paralyzed your face. And I thought, you mean the ones who saved my life?
Hmm.
And I tried very hard to listen and understand where she was. But we walked away from there, and my son said, I don't want to go back to that house again, Mom. And I said, I understand. And I knew what he was talking about. Even though he may not have understood the gist of all of the conversations, he could feel the feelings. He could feel the emotions in the room.
Yeah.
And that wasn't an emotion he wanted to live in, all that negativity. And I quickly realized I need to choose right now. Am I going to become bitter and choose that path and blame and be the victim and sue this person. I can't tell you how many people have told me that the solution to my problems would be that I need to sue people and get money because of what they did to me. Because I have had some failed surgeries because these are all experimental procedures. You need to sue that doctor for what they did to you. And that is one path you can choose to take.
Yeah.
And I've just chosen that that's not the path I'm going to take. I'm going to choose to become better from the experiences that I've had. I'm going to choose to let those things go. And sometimes that means letting go of feelings that you could harbor. And instead, when you let them go, you are free from them. And you can step into the person you want to be instead of the person who's caught in the emotions of the web of the situation. And so I just remember that and thinking, okay, I'm not gonna let myself become bitter and tear others down in the process, but instead build people up. And so I think the reason that post resonates is, number one, we all have those difficult things and we get to choose. And number two, I don't hide away from the hard things. I face them head on. And that, I think, is part of what keeps me going, is saying, okay, this is my new reality. How am I going to learn how to move forward with this reality? My former reality, gone. And in the beginning, that was a difficult reality. When they sewed my eye, for a while, it was swollen, completely shut for several months. I had no vision out of that eye. I'm already deaf in this ear. I had no depth perception. I was running into things. I was running into people. I was crashing into things. I crashed into a table and I broke 2 of my toes.
Oh, no.
In 1 hour, I arrived in an event, and in the first hour of arriving at the event, I crashed into a person and I crashed into a table and broke my toes. And I just went back to my hotel room and I collapsed on my bed. And I was like, what am I doing here? What made me think I could do this? And then I had my little pity party and I got back up and I taped my toes and I put on some shoes and I went back out to the conference event and started seeing people I know who threw their arms around me and gave me hugs and said how proud they were of me and how much they were rooting for me and praying for me and how amazed they were with how I was carrying on. And that's what it comes down to, is you just have to continue to show up. You have to have those days where you mourn what you've lost, but then you have to choose to show up again the next day. And that's all it comes down to for me. There's no silver bullet. There's no special ingredient, secret sauce. It's just choose to show up every single day. And when that means showing up for myself, the more I show up for myself, the more I know I can also be depended upon to show up for others. And you do that on repeat, and people can see it. They know they can trust you. So I just lean into my authentic self and I don't sugarcoat it. And I know oftentimes when people say, oh, hey, how are you doing? They want you just to, I'm doing fine. I'm doing good.
Fine.
I'm doing great.
Fine is not an emotion.
Right. It's not. And my reality is such that if I don't let some people in on how I'm really doing, then I'm actually doing a disservice to myself and to them, because there might be a point in time where I need help or they need to be aware of the situation so that we can accommodate in different ways. And I have a few friends in the speaking community that I know I can tell them the truth, and they'll say, how are you? And I'm like, I'm not doing great today. So please make sure there's a pulpit right next to me so I can hold on to it if I need to, if my balance is not good, or if I start to stumble, like, you keep your eyes on me. And
through the crash pad.
Yeah, honestly. But I think that they appreciate that, and then they can step into that place of being, a savior in the moment that a savior is needed. And we have an ultimate savior, but we also have people who step into our lives who can help us in any given moment. And you need a savior when you can't save yourself.
Yeah.
And I have been in those places over and over again. And the people who have come to my aid in that moment are angels to me, because they did for me what I could not do for myself.
Yeah.
And so now one of my mottos for life, I have 2 mottos. Every interaction is an opportunity to change a life. and you can't take those interactions for granted. You don't know when you have a moment like this whether that interaction could be with someone who is at their own brink. They're standing on their own precipice and they're fighting their own Job battle, and how what you are doing or what you might be able to say to them could lift them out of their dark place. And so I never take those opportunities for granted. But the second thing I say is the best way to get out of your own SOS moment. And what is SOS? We know
Save
that
our souls.
save our souls. It's the international signal for help. You send out an SOS when you're not doing well. And the best way to get out of an SOS moment is to change SOS to see opportunities to serve. And when you see opportunities to serve others and you step in to be a help to them, you stop thinking about yourself, you stop focusing inward, you turn outward, and then all of a sudden you're helping someone else rise, you're coming to their assistance, and that lifts you at the same time. So those are kind of the things that I live by. And so when people come and help me in my SOS moments, they become my angels. And we by nature are very social creatures. We need other people. And I think of it like a wolf pack that, they're better when they're together and they each have different roles that they play. But instead of a pack of wolves, I have a pack of angels. And I love to be surrounded by those people who we are constantly lifting each other up.
This is why you're so beautiful, is because I'm so glad that with all this, you didn't go hide in the basement full of shame, because my life is better because of you in so many ways. And that you share that light. I felt it the entire time we we're talking, and I'm sure our listeners as well felt that light, is that if you would have hidden and been in the shame and tried to control that, oh, I have to look perfect or I have to be perfect before I can even go out, and instead you're breaking toes and you're
I'm tripping, I'm falling, I'm getting bruised, but I'm still getting back up.
you're showing up. You're showing up and serving others. And that's what this is about. That's what this life is about, is connecting, opportunities to serve. Yeah.
Absolutely. It is finding opportunities to serve, finding opportunities to help other people, because we are the ones who grow the most from those opportunities. We might be able to help someone in specific moments, but we grow not only from the moments, but more so from the people that we become by choosing that path.
Yeah. Jodi, it's been so wonderful to talk with you. There's one emotion that can't be counterfeited, and that's peace. Where does Jodi Orgill Brown find peace?
I find peace in Christ. And he helps me feel that peace when I am in nature, when I am disconnected from the world, when I don't have AirPods in or phone in hand or screens in front of me, but when I can truly be at one with my spirit, my soul. And I find that very much in nature, where those are some of those moments where I can look around and see, wow, look at what I get to be a part of. Or look at what I get to observe that happens all around me. It's almost a Moses moment where you realize I'm so small in this picture, and yet to be part of this grand plan is absolutely amazing. And he helps me feel it through music and through spoken words and through people whose souls and spirit resonate with my own.
Thank you so much. I felt that. I felt that. Thank you for joining us on this journey to find that emotion that can't be counterfeited, which is peace. I hope that this week that you felt the joy and the hope and the blessing of being on the journey, that it's so much more than the destination, that it's every step along the journey and how that can be a gift. We'll see you next week.